Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I am your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and we are back on the good soundboard today. Sorry about that last time.
Nice.
If I had discovered that error like 24 hours before we had to record, it would not have been a big deal. But I just didn't have the time to troubleshoot it. Like, what was it? Like, as we were doing the call.
Gremlins, my friend. Gremlins. It happens. How are you handling your first weekend of football withdrawal?
Oh, God, it's pretty tough, but I got to say the Stadium Series for hockey really filled the gap. I've got nothing until March 30th when UFL football starts. Cue laugh track. But the Stadium Series was awesome. I don't know if you got a chance to watch any of it.
I watched all 6 periods of it. I watched a lot of hockey and I watched a lot of basketball all-star coverage this weekend. It was, enough to fill the Jones. And you said nothing until March 30th, but next weekend we have Devils Lightning, so that is a big Just Giants battle of the hosts. So if anybody who's a Devils fan or just wants to go to watch Devils Lightning with us next Sunday, hit us up on the socials and we'll meet in Newark.
That sounds like a threat.
It's February, man.
Yeah, that Stadium Series was amazing. By the way, I'm gonna have a couple of notes on that. Devils won the jersey battle, like the logo and jerseys. They were by far the best. I would say the Islanders as a distant second with the old rugby style, and then the Flyers didn't do anything. They decided to wear basically their uniforms. Rangers by far the worst. I don't know what that was, other than a lack of effort.
Interesting is I originally had it right off the bat. I had Devils 1, I had Rangers 2, I had Islanders 3, and Philly 4. But when they got on the ice, I was like, well, wait a minute. The Islander one's way better than the Ranger one. And also the hats they were wearing too. Those, the ski caps, definitely when they were just warming up and stuff, accented a lot more too. So, yeah, they were good stuff. Grump, have you ever been to a Winter Classic, an outdoor game?
No, I really wanted to go to this one too, and it just stinks because the tickets were astronomical to be in like 20 or less degree weather in the 300 section. And
Yep.
my take on it was I had some people argue with me that being up high was better because of the angle and because the seats are designed for football, and I'm not going to argue with that. What I am going to say is I don't care how you want to construct the architecture, you are very far away up there, and the difference with being at an arena when you're watching hockey and you're real high up, because I don't really care, the screen, everything's right over the ice, so you're still looking straight ahead. At MetLife, if I can't see shit from up there, I'm looking to my right or left, away from the ice to look at the screens, and that kind of sucks, you know?
Yeah, there's 2 different types of outdoor game. There's the games that are played like in football type stadiums, and then there's the one that are played in baseball stadiums. And the baseball stadiums, the seats are angled completely, either almost perpendicular to what the ice is, so you're having very bad angles anyway. I went to the Winter Classic in Nashville a couple years ago, and the Lightning played out there, and that is played at Nissan Stadium, so it has like that football feel also. And we were in the second level, the club level, right when it starts to make that turn from like the goal line over. So we had a slight, wasn't exactly straight on, but starting to look over, and it was fine. We weren't super high up, we weren't super low. Its sense to me was you want to be a little higher, because if you're too low, again, the first row of seats is quite a bit from the ice. I mean, there's nobody on the glass. You're way out there. So you want to be kind of a little up to get the perspective. But again, you're going for atmosphere. You're going because it's a huge crowd. You're going because they play music during the timeouts. You're going because of the cool uniforms. You're going for the uniqueness of it, and it's just fun. It's just one of those. And like Nashville treated that like a bowl game. The whole city was super into it. There were probably 10,000 Lightning fans who came up from Tampa. It's a great event. Now, New York is different because we take everything like, oh, who cares? It's just here. So I don't know if it was the same atmosphere as like Nashville was, but it was great. It was, there were fun games on TV that, watching the Islanders kind of choke, that was kind of fun. And then the Rangers scoring at the end, that was, good times. But Yeah.
I'm going to hit you with a couple things here. So I agree. I think that the New York area is very whatever, and I think they would have been very whatever about this had they not made it specifically a Metro clash with New Jersey and Philly playing. You have your Turnpike battle, and then the Rangers and Islanders playing, I think was brilliant. It was the way to get everyone to go there. They managed to get like 140,000 people there in 2 days. That's pretty damn good for hockey.
Sure.
I'm going to say a couple other things here. I know they like to have fun with the Stadium Series, and they have different like practice uniforms. Their arrival stuff is different. The Devils showed up in like tracksuits, channeling Sopranos, which I thought was funny.
That's great.
Philly showed up in the Rocky thing with the gray sweats and the Converse and the beanie. I thought that was pretty great.
Even better.
The Rangers did some lame shit where they pretend they care about police and firemen. I don't. That was by far the lamest. I don't even know what the Islanders did. And the Devils beat the shit out of the Flyers to the point where I almost bought a Philly cheesesteak the next day just to wipe my ass with it. And and I'm going to hit you with this. I understand the rules, right? Mm-hmm. I get the rules of hockey. I watched the Rangers-Islanders game, and the Rangers came roaring back in the third. They got the advantage with penalties. They pulled the goalie really early. To get the extra man advantage, and they were able to come back 2 goals to tie it up. The goal at the end was lame. The overtime, I mean, it was like 10 seconds in, the net pops off the thing, and I understand it's legitimate. I get that it's a goal. Still whack. It was still whack. I was so excited for this overtime, and it was over in like the blink of an eye, and it was like almost controversial. I know it is what it is, but it just was such a letdown that's how that game ended. It was so exciting. And it was like this dumb, like. Well,
remember, they go to 3-on-3 in overtime because they want somebody to score. They do not want to go to shootouts. Shootouts is like the kissing your sister, and it's really stupid because soccer is like hockey is like soccer. There are points. So in soccer you get 3 points for a win, 1 for a tie. So I don't understand why they got rid of ties in hockey when they're still going to a point system. So. I guess Americans feel they have to see a winner or a loser when they go to a game.
Well, I think that shootouts are exciting, but in sort of a one-on-one way. It's not very hockey,
Yeah, you play a game, and all of a sudden it's kind of like, having them kick field goals at the end, like a field goal contest or a home run contest. It's not the game.
It's sort of a weird way to decide a winner. I think that there was something involved with the Olympic rink size is larger and allows for more movement or something like that. And to replicate that, to let speed take over, they just subtract a guy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the reason why the Devils are very good at it. They're very fast.
Yeah, they want more scoring opportunities. They want more breakaways, and they want if you're in the zone and something, it's easier to break to the other side. That's why they do it. They want to get it done in the 5 minutes before they get to the shootout, if possible.
Last thing on the Stadium Series, New Jersey Devil Nate Bastian with 2 goals. His first goal, which by the way he's only had like 3 on the year up until this game. And then he had 2 in the game. First goal, whips off the right glove and hits him with the DeVito celebration. Right up to the crowd. And that's going to channel us right into this episode here. We are going to take a look at the quarterbacks here.
As we get into that, the one thing I do want to say is, we've been having that debate, is Saquon Barkley the face of the franchise? Well, guess who was all over the broadcast for the last 2 days? One Thomas DeVito. So as much as all the Barkley fans out there think he's the face of the franchise and you have to re-sign him at any cost because he's Mr. Giant, there's one identifiable face right now for the New York Giants. It is a quarterback, and it's not their starting quarterback, and it's not their backup quarterback. It's their third string quarterback.
It's funny. I'm happy for him because, I don't know how much money Tommy DeVito is going to make playing football. This is his moment to make some quick cash. Good for him.
Sure.
And I think it's honestly, it hasn't been cringe to me yet. A couple of things, I think at the award show that I never watched, I think there was a stupid commercial or something, but.
Yeah, I mean, the intro to the Stadium Series was all about the stereotypes of Jersey, you know, the diners in Jersey Shore and all that stuff. And
the Staten Island accent. I'm going to propose something.
Yes, sir.
If Jersey is going to be associated with a Staten Island accent forever, I say that we just annex it and make it part of New Jersey at this point, and just nobody seems to want it anyway. So
remember, your co-host, the Grump here, he's lived in Jersey all of his life. Does he sound like Tommy DeVito? Does he sound like...
Do I even have an accent? I mean, I clearly do, but is it very strong? Only when I get animated, right?
Very, very, very light. Your parents have a much stronger accent than you do.
My mother...
Your sister has a bigger one than you do.
Oh, yeah. My sister does. But my mother is very funny. When she gets... You can tell when you've got her revved up, because all of a sudden she starts dropping letters because like she's back on Long Island.
Yeah, she's got a Long Island accent. She doesn't have a Jersey accent.
No.
You are pretty neutral.
Thank you.
I have the curse of been living in Long Island for 14 years and Florida for 14 years. So some words I can't say because I have competing accents, and based on how many beers I have, you know... And how pissed off basically the more angry I get, it comes more the Long Island comes out for me. So
I've seen you stumble over to a Porta John like Popeye before. In any case, we're going to take a look at the quarterbacks on this roster. We're going to look at who we had last year, who we currently have under contract, and what needs to be done in the offseason for the 2024 season. Why don't you give us a quick rundown on how exactly we're going to do this? Because we're going to do it every week up until the draft, just about at each position.
Yeah, I wanted to come up with a very simple way to identify where this roster is right now. You know, Grump and I have been saying now for 2 years we're in a rebuild. We're in the beginning of a rebuild. We're in the middle of a rebuild. We're still rebuilding. And we've been using that, you know, worst case as an excuse, best case as an honest assessment of where we are and where we should be. So I want to take a look at this roster at the end of, based upon the end of the season, and say, looking at each player on the roster in each position group, whether it's starter, backup, third string, whatever, and kind of assign it one of three categories. There you go. There's an accent right there for you, Grump. The first one, is this a player we want to build around? So we'll call those guys a build around. Somebody that's a rock, a foundational piece of this team that, you know, is not going anywhere. We want to keep this person. The second one is good for now. Somebody that is not a long-term piece. Someone that for this year, next year, good enough to be the starter, good enough to be the backup, but not part of our long-range planning. And the third one is move on. That is somebody that, you know, we have a problem with this person being our starter, or there is a depth deficiency because of this person. And how are we coming up with these three categories? We're going to factor everything into this. We're going to factor their playing ability. Are they good? Do they suck? Their health. Are they injured all the time? Are they healthy? Are they Iron Men? What's their contract like? Are they, you know, are they cap friendly? Are they an albatross on the salary cap? Their age, you know, is this someone that's still ascending in their career and maybe there's some development time, or are they old fossils like me who, you know, they're past their prime and, you know, maybe if they were younger would be a foundational piece, or now that they're just, well, they're good enough for right now. So we're going to assign everybody for each roster position one of these designations. And once we're done, we'll tally up everything. And based on our estimate, where are we with this roster construction? Are we still have a lot of rebuilding to do, or are we just a few pieces away? So as we go through this, starting with the quarterbacks today, as we talk about, you know, as we assign things, we'll keep a running tally and we'll keep it going. But we'll post it on the socials after each episode and let you know where we're going and everything. So that's how we're going to kind of do this for the next several weeks going into, you know, as we start the acquisition and the cutting pieces of this, you know, with free agency and the draft and everything.
And as a reminder, I have another YouTube channel, the Football Grump. There's a picture right there on the screen for you. I have already looked at some of the draft solutions for the quarterback position. That was actually the first thing that I tackled a couple of weeks ago before I went to the Senior Bowl, and I am a gigantic loser because every week for the next couple of weeks until the draft, I will be releasing a new video on Monday mornings with a new position that I've already looked at the top 16 or so players at that position in the draft. So this morning at 9:30 or so, I released a video on offensive tackles. I am already on past the quarterbacks and on to the next group, and we are going to check out the O-line guys next week. So I will we'll be all the way caught up by then and moving forward.
Perfect.
So if you want to supplement this video with or this podcast, if you're listening, with my video, I have a more in-depth stuff on each of the top 6 quarterbacks in the draft. I go into a lot more detail there because this is going to be more casual, you and I talking, and this is going to be very Giants-centric, whereas that video is strictly about the players and their draftability and their traits and all that kind of stuff. So it's more digestible for everybody. You can look at it outside of the Giants vacuum. But before we actually start, I'm going to be drinking a Czech-style Pilsner from Twin Elephant Brewing that I can't pronounce. So I'm going to just crack it open and enjoy it. And I'm drinking local brewery Twin Elephant Brewing because they're a small business that deserves their hard work recognized just like ours. So please tell a friend about Just Giants and subscribe and tell a friend to subscribe.
I'll be drinking water from the tap. Here you go.
State owned. I want to start from the bottom up. There were 3 players at the 2020, and I'm only going to count the main 3 players in quarterback in 2023. Daniel Jones, Tyrod Taylor, and Tommy DeVito. Since we already started talking about Tommy DeVito, let's go right there because I think that's actually one of the more interesting ones. I think he's kind of polarizing among Giants fans because I think that he might be more popular than he is good, and that really irritates people who are very football centric. I think my feelings on Tommy DeVito are kind of known. I think I've been pretty steady on him since the offseason when they signed him up until now. I think that he's a functional quarterback that has traits, but he is very inexperienced and needs quite a lot of time. He was not pro ready or anything close to it. He was just a guy that had some developmental stuff, some ability that you could woodshed and maybe make a backup quarterback for cheap out of. And that's probably 100% of the reason why he was acquired to begin with. I'm sure they did not acquire him for his marketability. That was just a bonus.
And they also didn't acquire him to be playing large chunks of this season.
I'm sure when they looked at the playing Dallas in Dallas, they were not anticipating starting Tommy DeVito in that game. That being said, I'm going to... Well, I mean, I think that given the situation that he had last year and knowing what I think I know about him as a player, I thought he did fairly well. He's clearly not a guy that had enough time to even be coached into some of the games that he had to play. There were like 2 or 3 games that he was put in the middle because Tyrod can't stay healthy. The other games in which, and I remember the Green Bay game being like a lightning rod for the fan base of like, why the hell are we starting DeVito and not Tommy Taylor or Tyrod Taylor? And that might have been his best game of the season. Now, of course, it was on Monday night.
Oh, sure. It might be the best game of his career if we look back 10 years from now.
That's also very, very true. But I'm going to go ahead and say that he is going to be in that middle category for me of good for now and developmental because I still view him the same way I viewed him coming into last year. He is still a quarterback 3 with the possibility of developing into a quarterback 2 that you could get for cheap. And I think that every team should have one of those, and we don't have one. I think that the experience he got last year is very good for him. It wasn't a real year for him, but the game experience he got was still very real. And I will say that in the games, even when he didn't look good or whatever, the moment never really seemed too big for him. Just the game itself, like he wasn't coached up and ready yet to play in some of the games. What do you think?
again, we're also talking about a third string quarterback. I mean, player X, whoever that is, this is a third string quarterback. So my grade is definitely sliding scale as opposed to who a starting quarterback, even a backup quarterback is. To me, a third string quarterback is really somebody more about what is their potential for development more than anything they actually do on the field that they have to go on. So for me, I think he proved enough to be a good for now. I mean, he's not somebody we've seen some backup quarterbacks in this league that are move on because they can't run an offense, they can't throw, they can't complete a pass. He proved he can at least could complete a pass. Um, I am not certainly going to put him into the first category because I don't have any high hopes for him, and I think we're thinking about if we're going to develop this guy that maybe he can be a legitimate backup quarterback. That's not very. I don't get very excited about that. I don't put much hopes for that. But again, he's coming off his rookie year. He's dirt cheap. He knows the offense. He has some experience. That's really all you really need from your third string quarterback. So to me, that's in the good for now category.
Yeah, and I mean, he's under contract anyway, and then after that, he's an exclusive rights free agent in 2025. So he still have the right of first refusal and everything. He makes $900K. I mean, there's no reason to upgrade this, in my opinion. And if anything, the fact that he got live bullets last year is reason to keep him, considering the contract, considering the fact that he didn't get injured. There's no reason to get rid of him or upgrade him, in my opinion.
Yeah, and let's be blunt. If any NFL team has to go to a third string quarterback, your season's over. You should not be thinking about the playoffs. The fact we even whiffed the scent of the playoffs is kind of a testament to how he came in, and played under fire and did his job with a team that had injuries all over the place anyway. So I think that was just a random alignment of the stars we were in that position. But yeah, I mean, for all the reasons we said, I think it's just someone you just keep on the roster and another off season, another year of getting acclimated with the offense, another chance to get some reps, and we see what happens. And I'm fine with him for now.
Moving up the chain of command here. Next, we have the expiring contract of Tyrod Taylor. Our quarterback 2 was signed on a 2-year deal worth $11 million. I believe there's actually still a dead cap hit for him in 2024 of like $1 million. Like probably a void year, or it might have been a contract restructure. I don't really remember. It doesn't really matter. This is interesting to me because I know where you're going to go with Tyrod Taylor, I think.
Do you?
I think so. I think that you're going to say that he's an upgrade kind of backup quarterback. In my opinion, he came expensive. But at the time, I didn't have a problem with the contract 2 years ago because I understood the need for a gap in case Daniel Jones was bad. You needed one extra year. I think that Tyrod Taylor had a similar skill set, so you didn't have to change the offense away from what Daniel Jones was good at. It all made sense to me. These last 2 years have proven to me that Tyrod Taylor would choke on a pill. There was nothing that man could do without getting hurt in some way, shape, or form. Like the exact opposite of Mr. Magoo. I have to think that, and you've made a convincing case for me over the years, pretty much over the last year that felt like multiple years, that a quarterback 2's job is to remain healthy. And if you have to go in there as quarterback 1 mid-game and there is no quarterback 3, you are now quarterback 1 and only. And you have to stop playing like an asshole. And Tyrod Taylor, even at 34, I think he is never not auditioning for a starting role. Ever. And for the amount of money that he seems to command, I think that he's an upgrade. I mean, even though he's gone anyway, I think he's an upgrade. And if you don't have this, then you did a damn good lawyering job because you convinced me at this point.
I actually thought really long and hard about this one, whether he's a good for now or a move on. But again, thinking about everything, thinking about his age, thinking about his the injury bug, it always seems to hit him. The most important thing is that he does not have the mindset that he's a backup quarterback. He still believes he's a starting quarterback, where, some head coaches, they may get fired and become an offensive coordinator. They always think they're head coaches. They're looking for that other opportunity. The same with him. I think that offsets, him being a veteran, a guy that seems to be liked in the locker room, being in the system for a while. But to me, I think there are going to be a lot of backups in this league. And I think the backup quarterback on this team is going to be very, very, very important, because, when we get to talk to Daniel Jones, that's going to be a huge conversation about what he is. But the fact is, Daniel Jones is never always healthy, and relying on a backup quarterback is very important. I think you can do it younger, cheaper, durable, and knowing the role more than someone other than Tyrod Taylor. So to me, he is a move on character for me.
Yeah, I jockeyed with the good for now until I started looking at other possible free agent replacements, because he's already gone, right? So my thought process was I don't know if Daniel Jones is going to start week 1 or 2 because of the late ACL injury. We might have to have somebody start for a couple games before whatever, and it's you need somebody. And it's no, because the other options are cheaper and they know their role. At least I think so. I mean, I don't do deep dives on some of the guys that we're going to talk about, but you convinced me. But it was close, because I do think that quarterback 2 on this roster is a huge, huge deal for next year, because I am not convinced that Daniel Jones is going to be ready for week 1, just coming back from injury. And quite frankly, I might be the only person who's still nervous about the neck injury.
Well, let's get into it. I mean, it's probably the most important conversation we have to have in this offseason for one player. I mean, I know the Saquon Barkley talks and have a lot of oxygen, and I know, Xavier McKinney is going to be a thing, but this franchise is at a crossroads in determining what they're going to do with their starting quarterback, and that's Daniel Jones.
You want me to hit it?
Hit it.
I listed Daniel Jones as a needs to be replaced, and that is with the caveat that is not next year. They are financially hamstrung. They have handcuffed themselves to him for 2 years, and this is year 2 of that. And I'm not here to talk about the contract, but it is what it is. My fear at this point is that not only have the New York Giants ruined Daniel Jones as a college kid coming out of Duke, who had some very workable traits that they could have crafted into a functioning franchise quarterback. Maybe not all-world quarterback, certainly not the next Eli Manning, but definitely a guy that could run an effective offense. They've ruined it. I think a lot of it had to do with Jason Garrett, and I certainly think the injuries didn't help. He doesn't protect himself. The coaches aren't able to protect him from himself. And I am really worried about not just the tally of injuries over the years. I mean, that one in Dallas was really scary 2 years ago, where he couldn't even walk afterwards. He got concussed so badly, and he was foaming at the mouth and shit. And which, by the way, I do that in the stands from time to time. So, but last year, I'm really terrified. The neck injury thing, I've said it a million times. The first couple throws in that Raiders game looked like he had no feeling in his fingers whatsoever. And then in that same game, not too much longer later for us to find out if he got any better, he tore his ACL. And, I understand that people come back from ACLs now and whatever, but there's still the mentality thing. And Daniel Jones running is half of what makes him very effective. He is not so good in the pocket that he can't have that ability. He never was. It was that dual threat ability that made him a functional, quarterback. And I think that picking 6th overall, you're within striking distance of the top 3 in the draft. And if not, there are a lot of what we think to be workable quarterbacks in this draft. I think the time is now to make the move, even if you don't have to yet. So I designated Daniel Jones as needs to be replaced.
And I designated him as good for now mainly because of the the salary situation. And even if we drafted a quarterback, I would rather have that quarterback ease into the role. Having a quarterback coming in and starting on day one is a tough task to begin with. You couple that with an offensive line that's still going to be in very much question, a receiving core that, as of right now is not very attractive. We don't know if Saquon Barkley is going to be back or not or anything. So to me, the little definition of good for now is Daniel Jones is good enough to be that placeholder until we're ready to move on. I think I agree with you that he's not a franchise guy. Certainly, there's too many variables and question marks about him. I think if he was a healthy guy, I think he has the skill set that can, the Giants could win with a guy like him. He's not a Patrick Mahomes. He's not a guy who's going to win games for you just because he's him. But I think he has the skill sets and the skill traits that he could be an effective quarterback, above average quarterback in this league with the right personnel around him, the right coaching and everything. But you can't discount the fact that he's brittle and he gets hurt. Some things are his fault. Some things are not his fault. He's had some bad luck. He's had, wrong place, wrong time. And it's just too much of a risk and too much of a potential that, he's not a franchise guy. I also don't think that he's at the point where you throw him out immediately. It's like, I can't play with this guy next year. I'd rather bring in a rookie or bring in, if they decide to go in the direction of, I have to bring in a free agent because I can't play with this guy. And this is with the caveat that Daniel Jones is ready to go by like week 2 or 3, the absolute latest. I think they can, they can probably jerry rig something to get by until he's back. So that's what I'm saying with this. But I don't think he's at a point where we can't start this guy anymore because he's not good enough. So that's why I'm going to have him in that good for now, but I see the writing on the wall. And if we do this exercise next year when it's more cap friendly to do so, and, we made moves in 2023 to find an heir apparent, he'll probably be on that needs to go. But right now I'm going to put him on the good for now.
So it's interesting. I actually have the same conclusion as you, but I gave him a different designation because I think that his upgrade is inevitable. I decided to designate him as replaced. But I agree with you. I don't want... If the solution is like I think it is when you're drafting in the top 6 to draft his replacement and move on and whatever, I don't want that replacement playing week 1. Even if Daniel Jones is not ready to go. I don't want that. I don't necessarily know what the solution is, and I don't know if that solution is running Tommy DeVito out there week 1. I don't think that's very smart either. But I really don't want, everything you just said, bringing in a rookie quarterback to start. Because what the hell happens if he wins 3 straight games? Then you're stuck in this weirdo thing where he's like, wow, he's inexperienced, and some of it's the coaches. We talked about Tommy DeVito getting some credit for, how he played last year and the fact that they could even sniff the playoffs was a credit to him. It is. It's also a credit to the coaching staff. Anthony Larger brought that up when we had him on, that the success of the team down the stretch and the fact that they didn't quit despite all the turmoil, despite the fact that they looked like shit and, your franchise quarterback goes down, they still hung together and they started to win games down the stretch. I think that's
against
a credit
some pretty decent teams too.
It's some pretty decent defenses. I know they lost that game to the Jets, but to hang around, I know it was a brutal game, but defensively, I didn't think we were going to move the ball on offense. Like, it was just going to be a problem, and we kind of didn't. But
we kicked Green Bay's ass. we kind of kicked Philly's ass at the end. Those are
that's definitely true.
Those are 2 playoff teams, and those are legitimate playoff teams. There's something to be said for that.
And both of those teams fired their coordinators.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I think it's a credit to the coaching staff. So I think you could find yourself in a weird situation. You bring in a young guy and you coach him up for the first couple games to cover the difference. And now you're stuck in a weird situation where what are you going to do, bench him for Daniel Jones? I don't know. And that's not really even the major problem. I just don't want a rookie quarterback starting week 1 that's not even going to be picked first overall. I mean, like, guys that Bryce Young looked terrible all last year for a multitude of reasons.
So I guess the conversation then needs to go to, this is an opportunity. We're currently drafting 6. There are free agent options out there. What can the Giants do to improve this position if they want to improve the position this year?
So do you want to start with draft guys, or you want to start with free agent guys?
Let's start with free agent guys. I think, everybody's focusing on the draft, and we know who the main suspects are, and we can talk about them, but let's dig a little into the free agent class. I don't think that's being discussed as much, nationally and locally as it probably should.
The free agent class to me is interesting because there's like 2 guys that I think you can consider like legitimate quarterbacks. Like you have your Ryan Tannehill and your who the hell is the other free agent? Oh, well, I guess there's 3. I'm sorry, there's 3. You have Ryan Tannehill, you have Kirk Cousins, who's coming off of a pretty bad injury, and I'm going to consider Baker Mayfield.
Baker Mayfield, sure.
Yeah. And I just don't know that going out and buying any one of those 3 guys is really the answer. It doesn't seem like something the Giants are going to do. Kirk Cousins, at this point, kind of old. He's definitely going to be really expensive. Ryan Tannehill you might get for a little bit cheaper. Severely limited, though, also getting up there in age. Baker Mayfield, definitely limited. He would be the one dark horse, but I think he's going to command the most money on the market, and that's why I think he's totally out of the mix, right?
Yeah, to me, there's 2 things I look at with this. One, are we just a quarterback away from making a very serious run? And to me, the answer is no. And 2, the only reason we're having this talk about, getting rid of Daniel Jones is we have a potential get out of jail free card with the way his contract was structured. And to me, that means you have the opportunity to get somebody at a rookie contract far cheaper, where we need to have our cap resources for a lot of other problems that are on this team. And to me, just to replace a guy making $40 million a year with another guy who's making $40 million a year, who's not going to be, squarely someone in that franchise group that we're talking about, but it's more going to be probably a good for now guy, doesn't seem to make any logical sense. So I don't think, if they are still comfortable with Daniel Jones and willing to risk the injury thing, I think they'd rather just stay with Daniel Jones and go the free agent route. I think if they really do want to upgrade the position for going forward, it would be with the draft.
And that's what makes the free agent market kind of interesting, is because you have a lot of guys hanging around the Tyrod Taylor sort of position. And that's where I kind of laser focus. So I'm going to list some names for you, starting with the least expensive and working my way up to the most expensive, based on what they made last year.
Okay.
Cheapest, that I think is almost a fit, Mason Rudolph, 28 years old, only cost $1 million last year. That's very cheap. That's like Tommy DeVito money.
Yeah.
It's not terrible for a quarterback, too, is it?
No, but I mean, again, if we're thinking about a quarterback 2 who has a greater probability of playing, that might be a little dumpster diving, a little too much for me.
Okay. Next, we have at $1.1 million last year, 33-year-old Matt Barkley. I have some familiarity with the coaching staff.
I'd rather have Mason Rudolph.
There we go. All right, working our way further up the chain of irritating Cranky fan. 27-year-old Drew Lock, who made $4 million last year. Again, we're talking quarterback 2 here.
Yep. Yeah. I mean,
Could see
again,
that
I'm
one.
trying to. In my brain, it's like, can I see Drew Lock playing 5 weeks in a row if I needed him? I think if Daniel Jones was a little more stable in the health department, possibly, but I'm still not there yet with for a guy like Drew Lock. Keep going.
The next 3 I think are the most interesting.
Okay.
26-year-old Sam Darnold, $4.5 million last year.
Sam Darnold I look really good for 2 games and then I stink afterwards. Does he have that type of Fitz magic in him.
Kinda, yeah. I'm not really sure what his story is, honestly, because when you look at it, everywhere he went and had to perform has been like a shithole. The Jets haven't really done shit. Carolina looked even worse. I mean, how much are we really blaming on Sam Darnold himself? None of us really know exactly what went on.
But aren't we kind of like in sort of that category a little bit right now? I mean, we're a little bit of a shithole.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're a glorified shithole right now.
I mean, in terms of how much was what happened to Sam Darnold's fault, and how much was his environment.
Yeah.
If our conversation is leading us to he needs a perfect environment to be good, this is not a perfect environment.
Yeah, we're closer to the South Bronx than we are the West Village right now, I think, as far as neighborhoods.
He is by far the youngest free agent. Sorry, not by far, by about a year, but I think the talent between Darnold and Locke is pretty different.
I'm not slamming the door on it, but let's keep going.
30-year-old Marcus Mariota at only $5 million. That one I could see.
I could possibly see that because I have this hunch that Marcus Mariota now knows what his role in the league is. I think he's old enough. Unlike Tyrod Taylor, who still thinks he's a starting quarterback, I think Mariota, I think he's been kind of like course corrected to what he is. And I think he has some interesting possibilities with the way he can still run and the mobileness about him. So far, of all the ones you've mentioned, this is the most appealing one to me.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I agree with your assessment also that he like understands his role in the league. Watching that quarterback show that Peyton Manning made that was like behind the scenes throughout the year with Patrick Mahomes and Kirk Cousins and him, he was like the most treating it like a job guy there. Like Mahomes clearly super competitive. Kirk Cousins I think is a very normal guy, but you can also see that, you know, he is a franchise quarterback and he knows what he's capable of. Whereas Marcus Mariota, he's like introducing to his personal chef who is also his best friend in college. You know what I mean? It very much just seemed like it was a job to him.
Yeah.
And then here's my last one. I think this one's really interesting because it's more than what Tyrod Taylor made per year, but not by too much. And do you really need him for 2 years? It's 31-year-old Jacoby Brissett, $8 million. The most accomplished, I would say, out of all these quarterbacks.
Yeah, but you know something? The thought of Jacoby Brissett seems to be better than the production of Jacoby Brissett. You know, it's always like, oh, they just signed Jacoby Brissett. Oh! And then just like it kind of peters out. So I think I still would rather have Mariota than Brissett, personally.
Yeah, I think that if this were 2 years ago and you had a fresher Daniel Jones and you needed to sign a backup quarterback and they signed Tyrod Taylor, I would have rather Jacoby Brissett probably, I guess, at that time.
Yeah.
But this is a different time. We don't really know what the deal is. The free agent class is really just quarterback twos. So I think that – do you think that they sign any of those guys to back up Daniel Jones, or do you think they go with replace and that's it?
Well, if they draft a quarterback and then you're considering still keeping Tommy DeVito, I'm not going to keep 4 quarterbacks on the roster. So,
well, I mean, Daniel Jones can still be PUP'd if he's not going to be ready by week 1. So you have 4 weeks where you can do some roster shuffling and figure some shit out.
I guess you just answered your question. Then it depends on the health of Daniel Jones. I guess if they think Daniel Jones is ready to go by, let's say week 2. You know, I think they would try to, you know, free ball it with maybe possibly even with Danny DeVito, with Tommy DeVito, just get through that 1 week before Daniel Jones is ready. If it's like Daniel Jones is not ready till week 4 or so, I could see them bringing in one of these guys. You're right. You bring them in, they're probably not going to be too super expensive. You can always launch it when the time is right.
I'd sign Danny DeVito's twin.
And we're also assuming too that they are going quarterback with their first pick in the draft too. We still don't know what they're thinking. I mean, all the public facing things they're saying is, you know, they're still in with Daniel Jones, but you know, if we were drafting 3rd or 2nd, maybe the situation different, but drafting 6, maybe their guy is not there.
Sure.
How on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you think that's the likelihood they would even trade up for the guy that they really want? I mean, do you think it's even still
I
on their board or?
I will hope that that is very much a possibility because of the phrasing you used. To get their guy,
Yes.
if you're picking at 6 and your guy is within 6 picks, I don't give a shit if he's your guy. You've decided he's your guy. You're the guy who gets to meet him, quiz him, get him up at the chalkboard and draw plays, and you get to test him, test his character, and then you get to see him up close and personal, and you've decided that he's the guy. You're smarter than me and you have more information than me. Do whatever it takes to get that guy.
And
So, yes.
and not only all those things you just said, and you've decided you want to move on from Daniel Jones. It's a two-pronged question. You may say that might be my guy, but I still think I'm a Daniel Jones guy. I don't know if I'm going to be giving up assets to get my guy. If they've made that decision first and foremost that the Daniel Jones era has an infinite lifespan and we see the end, they have to make that call first, and then they say that's my guy.
Gun to your head, what do you think Joe Shane thinks of that situation you just described?
Gun to my head, gun to my head, knowing how Joe Shane has handled contracts and things so far, I think he would prefer to have a quarterback on a rookie deal. And I think that even if there is a drop off from peak Daniel Jones to what his guy might be, whether it's Drake May or whoever, I think he can live with that little decrease in ability and talent experience to save a whole heck of a lot of money in 2025.
I totally agree with you. And I think that it's too tempting for anybody to not say, hell yes. I mean, you're right there. And there are some really, really interesting draft targets here. And I want to kind of shift the conversation to that.
Well, because I'm just thinking, I keep going back to Patrick Mahomes is the first quarterback on a max contract to win a Super Bowl. And that's because right now they're in their window and they're at peak Patrick Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Jones is going to be at a $40 million contract or whatever he is for this year, next year, and this roster is not going to be caught up to what we're paying Daniel Jones. So if we're not going to be there to really have that window for a Super Bowl with the Daniel Jones money, why are we spending the money on Daniel Jones? If you can get out of it, the situation has changed and it did 2 years ago. And I think if you have the opportunity to get that get out of jail free card, you take it. And I think Joe Shane's thinking the exact same thing.
There was very little I liked about that contract. I at one time categorized it as team friendly, which is an overstatement. That's not true. But it was mainly because they managed to squeak in there a 2-year out. That is essentially a 2-year deal that Daniel Jones signed. It's not, but it's essentially one. He understands that it's on him to perform for 2 years if he wants all of the money in that contract.
Or not only perform, stay healthy.
Well,
prove you can play
sure.
17 games. Yeah.
Shifting over to the draft, there
Yes.
are, I would say, 6 consensus top quarterbacks. I have a 7th for you. And I don't agree that there is a hierarchy that is a consensus. I don't believe that scouts believe that. I don't think that GMs are all on the same page with that shit either. I think that maybe the media thinks so, and certainly the fans think so. But I think that there are things to not like about all of the top quarterbacks in this draft. There are real concerns that I have with all of them. Like I said, I addressed this all in my video, and I have film in that video that I go to show all of these things that I'm talking about. So if you're listening to this and you're like, you're crazy, you're the only person I heard say that, go ahead and watch that video if you don't believe me. I'm going to start right away with Drake May because he's the only name we've dropped so far. He's picked up some steam, North Carolina quarterback. My biggest thing with Drake May is he really seems to understand the field the most out of all the quarterbacks in this class, I think. It really seems like he reads the field well. He can extend plays. He can throw really accurate in the short range. I don't think he's got a long arm. Everybody says he's got this big arm, and I can't see. I've saw multiple throws where he underthrew receivers at 45 air yards, which is not a ton, because they had to stop and turn back to catch his pass at 45 air yards. That's not a lot. I have serious concerns with that he just doesn't have the NFL big arm. And if you're picking in the top 5, that's a serious concern for me. But to me, Drake May is probably the cleanest of the prospects. Did you see any of Drake May in your college watching of your, not with your Gators, but I know you always put shit on.
I saw him on the North Carolina South Carolina game, the first game of the year. So granted, that's a whole season that was to be played since then. And I mean, he looked like a guy, like a kind of a prototypical NFL quarterback, but I didn't come away thinking, oh my God, this is a guy I need to draft. I didn't see him. I didn't look at him and say, this is a potential franchise Pro Bowl potential quarterback.
What's the other thing too is that his offensive line really let him down this year. But and that seems to be I don't want to say the word excuse, but the prevailing caveat every time you bring up that he didn't dominate. Where do you think he's going? He's going to an organization that hasn't had a functioning offensive line in forever. So if you expect different results, you're going to be pretty out of your mind for a couple of years. It's going to be a couple of years so this offensive line is functioning to the point where a rookie can come in there and not be freaking out.
I also kind of look at, when it's quote unquote my guy, this is a quarterback that's going to align to what type of offense we're trying to run and capabilities. Does he look like a guy that would fit into what, Mike Kafka and Brian Dable are trying to do on offense?
I'm not really sure about that, but because they came in here with an established situation, and it is sort of coincidence that Daniel Jones and Josh Allen have similar-ish skill sets in that running is very much part of who they are. They have good deep ball accuracy. They're similar in ways, even if they're not similar in production and whatever. Had Brian Dable and Joe Shane walked into a situation where they have a Tom Brady style quarterback who's simply a drop back and can't run to save his soul and whatever, I don't know what kind of offense that they would come together with. And one thing that Mike Kafka and Brian Dable said repeatedly over the last 2 years is that this is not the Bills offense. This is not the Chiefs offense. This is the New York Giants offense. We tailored this to what we have and what we're comfortable with coaching. So I don't really know the answer to that question. I would say Drake May doesn't necessarily fit what they've been running, but not necessarily that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not something they can run or want to run or whatever.
Gotcha. So they're not going to be system specific when they're trying to determine what their guy is.
I should hope not, because I think that we're going to come to the end of this in a couple of weeks saying that we need a lot more pieces than we have.
I kind of had that hunch myself.
So if we pigeonholed ourselves into a specific scheme, I think we're limiting ourselves. And it's a tight window in the NFL. You can't really limit yourself. I'm going to pop over to Caleb Williams because he was the consensus #1 USC quarterback. He won Heisman last 2 years ago.
He won in 2022. He won it.
Serious concerns here as well. I do think that there are some level of intangible concerns. His outspokenness, he's had a media spotlight on him. I am not going to speak on that. I just know that he's been in the spotlight a lot more than the other guys. He's done weirder I don't know. He's done things that make people uncomfortable. I don't know or care about any of that, but it is a thing, so I'm mentioning it. Regardless, Caleb Williams is a guy that has the big arm. He has the running ability, the dual threat ability, but he also has the magic ability to him. He has a little bit of that Mahomes, where it's like there are 3 free rushers running directly out of him. He ducks, flips one over him with like a fireman's carry, spin moves out of another, and jukes one guy out of his shoes, and then throws a 50-yard bomb to a wide open Brennan Rice. That kind of thing guys either have or don't have, and he certainly has that. He also has quite a bit of hero ball in him, where he's going to decide that I'm the only player on this fucking team. I'm saying that in a selfish way. I don't necessarily mean that, but like, he thinks that every single problem needs to be solved with him and does not live to fight another day, and sometimes loses 22 yards trying to escape a sack that was just one free rusher. Sometimes he fumbles. He fumbles a lot in the pocket because he's trying to do 58 different things, and he's really not careful with the football. And it's going to be difficult because what makes him special is doing that shit. And any coach that drafts Caleb Williams is going to have the difficult job of towing the line between, I need you to do this, but I need you to know when it's time to live to fight another day. That's a really difficult thing to teach, I think.
Here's my thing about Caleb Williams is that his coach is Lincoln Riley, right, at USC. And Lincoln Riley has been a quarterback whisperer. He's had how many number one and Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks when he was at Oklahoma and now at USC. And did Caleb Williams really get that much better this year from last year?
I mean, no, not really.
So that to me is a little bit of a red flag. If you have one of the best college quarterback coaches in the country and you don't show incremental improvement. I get it. He won the Heisman the year before, but coming back with that experience and, playing in a passing friendly league like the Pac-12, I would expect him to be dominant and be better than he was, and he really wasn't. So that to me, and again, with all the media spotlight and the attention and everything, maybe he just was, kind of coasting because he knew he was going to the NFL. And that to me is kind of a red
I was going to
flag.
say that's not any better.
No, because again, you only play 13 games a year. It's not like you're playing, a 162 game baseball schedule, or it's just like, it's June 20th. I'm like, God, just get this season over with, So, I don't know. He might prove me wrong and be, a Pro Bowler or an All-Pro and win a couple Super Bowls, but 2 + 2 is not equaling 4 with me with him.
Yeah, I want to be clear. All of these guys could prove me wrong. I'm listing the one major concern I have with all of them because I do think that there is a major concern with all of them. The next guy on my list is actually the guy I like the most, especially for the Giants. I think that the situation that they're in, being handcuffed to Daniel Jones for a year, actually is good. And that's Jaden Daniels from LSU. I think that this dude, the ceiling is through the roof. That doesn't make any sense, but it's insanely high, and you can see it. He's got the same kind of magic to him. He can run like crazy. He's got quite an arm on him. I think he led the NCAA in explosive plays, passes of over 20 yards. The biggest thing is I'm not sure how much he's reading the field. It looks like half-field reads, but we saw that shit with Deshaun Watson, and I said the same thing then. He's only reading half the field. I don't know how this is going to translate to the NFL, and the answer is incrementally, over time. You teach him.
I saw with my own 2 eyes the greatest quarterback performance in the history of college football. He had against, admittedly a bad Florida defense, 606 total yards. He threw for 350. He ran for over 200. I have never seen with my own eyes a more dominating performance, a man among boys. And again, the Florida defense was bad, historically bad, but had a lot of talent. They weren't just a bunch.
Florida defense is not the Akron Zips, though.
Exactly, that's my point. I saw him in person at the Swamp in 2022, and I saw that incremental improvement from 2022 to 2023. A lot of the stuff you talk about, reading half the field and stuff. Again, a lot of that also is a product of your offense and what's being run. College offenses are not as intricate as pro offenses. They are not as full field. They're not as, you pretty much, you're coached into this is what you're doing. Just do it. So, I think, again, from what I saw in person, this guy's got this skill set. My only question with him would be his size. Like, if you look at him, like that doesn't
thin
look
as a rail.
He doesn't look like an NFL quarterback. So again, being a little gun shy and a little PTSD about my quarterbacks getting injured, and I go all the way back to Phil Simms with that. I'm always going to be worried. But if he could stay, put on some weight, go through the strength and conditioning program and stuff, prove he could take a lick and stuff in the NFL, that he could be the most dynamic of all of them.
I really think so. I don't know. I'm not going to say what I was going to say because it's hyperbole. But I
couldn't believe what I was seeing. That night I was in Baton Rouge, I was sick to my stomach what was happening to us. But I just turned to my buddy and I'm like, we've never seen anything like this before. It was just ridiculous. The runs and the vision on these runs. It's not just a guy who's he's just fast. He's just maneuvering and weaving through a defense, and multiple runs, not just the ones that were 70 yards. It's like, it's 2nd and 23 or whatever from something, and he just got 30 yards like nothing.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It really is incredible to watch, and I think a lot of it is going to be between the ears stuff, and it's gonna be in the film room and in the weight room for him. And I think being handcuffed to your starting quarterback for a year is like a gimme. It's like a freebie. You get a mulligan year on a guy who needed a year. Most teams drafting in the top 5 that need a starting quarterback need one desperately. I don't know. To me, it makes so much sense that, like, of course he's going to go first overall or something. Like, I just don't think anything is going to go the Giants' way with this.
Never does.
But I'm going to move on because we are spending a bit of time, and I want to rattle through the next 4 guys fairly quickly because they're all going to be somewhat controversial. J.J. McCarthy from Michigan, national champion. Big thing on him is how much he threw the ball in Michigan and how dominant of a team he played on that was very, very run-centric and was loaded at that position. My take on him is that that's a very valid concern, and I think that he's rising in draft boards simply because the other guys have done things to hurt their stock and he hasn't done shit yet. I think that he's shown that he can make all the throws. Whether or not he can put the game on his shoulders and win, that's a different story. But if that's a story that you're trying to write in year 1 of a player, I think that that's a very difficult story to write. And I'd rather not worry about a rookie having to put the game on their shoulders at all. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just not worried about that. And I understand people's position is that if you're picking 6, you're going to pick a quarterback. He's got to be able to do that, and that's a totally fair argument. I just think that if you're going to evaluate the prospect, I'm not worried about that so much as every throw on tape looks bad. You know?
Yep. Okay.
If the Giants wound up with McCarthy, are you flipping out? No matter where they draft him. Forget the 6, 15, second round. Doesn't matter.
I mean, again, I'm going to compare everything to like replacement level over Daniel Jones, and I think that McCarthy is at least at Daniel Jones replacement level to me. So I'm not flipping out about it. No.
I'm going to agree with that. And I think that you get possibly a do-over with Daniel Jones essentially if you draft him. You know, like you just said, like, we did everything we could to ruin Daniel Jones. I think Jason Garrett ruined him. I think switching offensive coaches every 2 years ruined him.
Not having an offensive line, not having a number 1 receiver, not having a healthy Saquon Barkley. You know,
and it took 3 coaches until we got a coach that knew how to coach Daniel Jones. Now you get a do-over, pretty much. That's kind of how I view it a little bit.
Yep, exactly.
But I can also understand fans being like, I don't want a Daniel Jones do-over. That's totally valid in my opinion. Bo Nix from Oregon, formerly Auburn. I got to say, I put a day 2 grade on Bo Nix. I saw him in the Senior Bowl by far through the weakest ball. Didn't even throw a tight spiral. I can't imagine him throwing in the MetLife Wind. I think if his name were not Bo Nix, he wouldn't have even been important enough to transfer out of Auburn to Oregon.
I've never been impressed with him, and I saw him in person in was it before COVID? I think it was before COVID I saw him play in person. Wasn't overly impressed. I didn't get the hype then. I still don't get it at this point.
I made the joke in Mobile that with all the years he's had in college, he should have a doctorate in throwing the ball, and he certainly doesn't look like he does. The other guy, Michael Penix from Washington, I actually think was better than Bo Nix throughout the entire year. Watched him in the Senior Bowl, and I watched him get worse throughout the week. He started out looking like the best quarterback day 1. Day 2 was not so great, and day 3 was like not good at all. And then he just effed off and left. He didn't play the game. And usually when people leave, it's because they're hurt or because they played so well in practice they don't need the game. And I didn't think he was either of those two things. So I thought that was kind of skeptical. I think that the short area anticipation in routes and throwing to a spot where a guy is going to be is a thing that he just hasn't shown me he can do very well. He certainly struggled with it in Mobile. The downfield balls that you see in Washington highlights and that we were accustomed to in their almost championship year, he's certainly very good at, but you know, the Giants don't really make a good pocket to throw 40-yard balls in that he was getting the benefit of throwing it.
This may sound silly, but I'm not exactly sure if on the Giants I want to invest in a left-handed quarterback, considering we have a whole load of problems at right tackle right now. I
don't think that's silly at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, we have Andrew Thomas, who's one of the best left tackles in the league, and he's the guy who's, here's a little secret and a little foreshadowing. He's probably going to be in that that franchise category we're going to have if we get to left tackles. But when you have a left-handed quarterback, that guy's got to be protecting him on the right side. And right now, it is a complete question mark in 2024, much less the future going forward. So makes sense.
I'll even do one more thing for you.
Yep.
Forget the right side of the offensive line. Just take the entire offensive line. This is the one guy out of 7 that I'm going to mention that has the least amount of movement skills.
Even more so than Drake May?
Yeah, I think Drake May can and does move. They're both not very good, but I think that the other thing we're not talking about is Penix's ridiculous injury history.
That's true, too. 2 ACLs?
Yep, and more.
Good.
And a lot more. I detailed all of them in the other video, and so I don't have them off the top of my head, but I think he had an injury every single year going back to Indiana. And I think that what I was going to say was he has movement skills, but he's not moved very well in the last couple of years, I think, to protect himself.
Gotcha.
I don't know. And the last guy, dark horse, Spencer Rattler from South Carolina, quietly was the most consistent quarterback in Mobile. I don't love Spencer Rattler, and he didn't look great down there, but he looked pretty consistent, pretty functional. He's certainly not a day one guy. I have him as the lowest graded out of all the guys we talked about, day 2 guy, but he's got a little bit of that Baker Mayfield in him, and we expect Baker Mayfield to make what, 30 to 40 million this year?
What's the common link between him and Baker Mayfield?
Oklahoma.
Lincoln Riley.
That's right. But I mean, yes, you're right, but he continued on without Lincoln Riley, whereas Baker Mayfield stayed, right?
That's correct. He transferred to South Carolina.
Right. So I mean, there's a lot of things with Spencer Rattler.
But he also transferred. I mean, they had quarterback on top of quarterback on top of quarterback. So him leaving Oklahoma was
just, you're right.
Was a question about playing time more than anything. I think not that him not losing a starting job at Oklahoma is different than losing a starting job at Rutgers. There's a lot of
but I didn't view it that way. The way I was viewing it was more so like Baker Mayfield went to Lincoln Riley and elevated his draft stock. Spencer Rattler left Lincoln Riley and is, in my opinion, doing a good service to his draft stock. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it makes a difference, but it's different, so I'm pointing it out just in case it does make a difference. I don't know. My only thing is I don't know anybody talking about Spencer Rattler right now, so I figured I'd mention it because he really was the most consistent guy through all 3 days and then the game in Mobile. And it's not like he had a shit career in college either.
Let me ask you something then. So, we talk about these quarterbacks. Most of these guys are day 1 guys, top 10 guys probably. Do you see a scenario where the Giants, like in the 5th round or 6th round, take a quarterback where try to get one like on the cheap or on the on the value side?
No.
That really could no. To me, it's either they're going for the gold or they're getting it back up through.
If Tommy DeVito didn't play last year,
mm-hmm.
I think that's far more likely. And I think you do that to get that developmental guy or something like that. You might get like a Michael Pratt or something from Tulane or.
Gotcha.
That's my opinion. Or like a Sam Hartman or something like that. You get a guy like that you can develop into it, but you do a better version of what you did with Tommy DeVito. But you already have him, and he kind of proved that he's worth hanging around. So, no, I don't think this year that's in the cards.
Gotcha. Okay.
I got no further stuff on quarterbacks. We're running at about an hour 10. You got any closing thoughts for us?
No, I mean, I wish I was a fly on the wall at you know, at the Quest facility and what they're thinking. If they've already made the decision that they are going quarterback, or are they really still all in on Daniel Jones? I mean, it's really where this franchise is headed in the next several years is that decision. I mean, more so than what they're going to do with Saquon Barkley, more what they're going to do than with Evan Neal, more than putting grass on in MetLife instead of turf. I mean, that's the big decision is, are they ready to move on? And if they are ready to move on, how are they going to do it? So that is, once we get to April and the draft, we'll know the direction of this franchise going forward. And that's story 1, 2, and 3 for me this offseason.
So GM Cranky is signing Marcus Mariota to replace Taylor, and or drafting who to replace Jones? If you have your pick.
Well, we're talking about if my guy's available, because I do not think I would draft up for anybody again, just because of, we are a rebuilding team, and I don't not want to give up too many assets just to move up a spot or two to get a quarterback. All things equal, and again, from what I've seen, I think I'd go with Jaden Daniels right now. I think there's enough potential it factor with him that he's maybe a little rawer than the other guys, but in the right scenario with the right coaching and the right guys around him, could be really special. And I don't know if Drake May could be really special. I think Caleb Williams could be really special. I don't think he'll be available. I think he's the guy that, I think he would be the guy that I would take. And I think, if he was to hit, could be a real star in this town and really be something special.
Sorry, there was one other question I did want to ask you about these draft guys. Of the 7 I named, Rattler, Penix, Nix, McCarthy, Williams, May, and Daniels, is there anybody that the New York market is not a fit for? Or is there somebody that you're like, oh shit, he can't survive in this town? Which, by the way, is my least favorite thing about being a Giants fan, is that whole actual thing that is a thing because people decide they need to be annoying and harass people to make it true. But
I mean, I guess, would it be Caleb Williams just because of, now it's a thing about, oh, he was crying with the parents. Oh, he wears the nail polish. Like, it's something where it snowballs with the media. Polish. Yeah, something. If you're going to comment about that stuff now because you're a kid in college, you get to this town and all that little silly stuff gets magnified a lot. And I didn't get the sense he handled it the greatest way at USC this year. So I think he might, I think Penix would be fine here. Drake May would be fine. Jaden Daniels plays in the SEC. Every SEC market is like a mini New York, dealing with scrutiny for things.
I think McCarthy would be fine too.
I think he would be fine as well.
I'd worry about Rattler. I don't think it's a real possibility, but I would worry about him.
Maybe Bo Nix, possibly.
Yeah, you think so?
But again, I think a little bit, but I don't think anything to make me change my decision. Okay. And I don't think I would change my decision with Caleb Williams, but I think of all those guys, I think he could be the one that
I agree with that.
Could be potentially a lightning rod for more of it, and it'd be questioned how he handles it.
Well, I think part of it is that he's already established a foothold for people to criticize him over non-football things. And I think that having that foothold, it's never going to go. He could be great for 3 years, and as soon as he has a game where he throws 5 interceptions and the nail polish comment comes out. You know what I mean? It's
exactly.
It's one of those fucking things. It's just, it's so ridiculous, but it's a real thing. In any case, that's going to do it for this episode, right? You got nothing else?
I got nothing. Looking forward to our next. This is a great start for our roster, and I'm looking forward to doing the rest of the positions on it as well.
Next week, we're going to be doing offensive linemen after we go to Devils and Lightning on Sunday night. So Monday night, we'll record that episode for Tuesday morning, just like usual. So be sure to subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. And follow us on Twitter at @football_grump, at the Cranky Fan, and at Just Giants Pod. Until next time, go Giants.
Go Giants.